Hey guys, it's Vicky, and today I am coming at you with one of my favorite videos that I make all year on my channel, and it is my favorite books of the year. I love doing these videos because I just love kind of revisiting the books that just completely floored me throughout the year, the books that I feel have changed me, have challenged me. It's just fun to revisit them and just to share them with you guys also in the hopes that if you haven't read them, I can convince you to read them. And also to have those of you that also loved the books come out and say, oh, I loved that too, and then we can gush about it together. So this is a really fun video to do, and I have a little stack here. My only thing that I do with my favorites videos is I try to break my books up into categories. And maybe into like different genres or whatever. So not every book is necessarily a 5-star read, though for the year, I believe I had 9 5-star reads out of the 95 books I completed. So I am a little bit stingy with the 5-star ratings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a book isn't going to be a favorite for me. Because like I said, I usually try to break it down by genre and things like that just to kind of make it interesting. So there's that, and then also I don't include rereads in my favorites because I like to just kind of rehash books that were new to me this year. So let's go ahead and get into the favorites. So my first favorite of the year is one that I don't entirely know what it's classified as. I even tried Googling it. I think it's historical fiction. I think it's contemporary. I don't know. Somebody tell me, but this book is fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And it's The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. A buddy read this back in April, I want to say it was, with Bobby at Bobby Reads Too Much, and both of us absolutely adored this book. This book was on her favorites list as well. But like I said, I don't know if it's technically historical fiction or if it is contemporary or just literary fiction. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing. It is a story about a young man named Cyril who is growing up in Ireland, and the book basically starts from when his mother is pregnant with him and goes all the way until he is in his 70s. And what was interesting about the narrative in this was that it skipped every 7 years, I think it was a different chapter. So you kind of saw him, you'd miss 7 years of his life, and you'd see him jump from, 7 to 14, for example, but you still felt like you knew him. Cyril is one of those characters I will never forget. I absolutely loved him, though there were times that he frustrated me so much. This book is about, like I said, about Cyril's life, because at a very young age he realizes that he is gay, and he struggles with that, especially living in Ireland during the time that he's growing up. He was born in, I think, the late 40s. So, things have changed a bit in Ireland, I think, but at the time that he grew up, it was like criminal to be gay, and you could be killed for being gay. I mean, people were just brutal. And this story is so heartbreaking, but also funny, and also just so, it just pulls you in. It just pulls you in with all the characters, and I just loved it so much. This is one that I will definitely reread in the future because I loved it so much. So yeah, if you haven't read this, you gotta check it out. So my next 2 favorites for 2019 are historical fictions. I tried to just pick one, and I couldn't do it. So I've got 2 this time. The first one was my first 5-star read of the year. I read this book in January. It was literally, I think, the 3rd book I read for the year, and I loved it. It's The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This still stands. I went ahead and I have now read 4 Kristen Hanna books this year. This was the first one, and this one's still my favorite. I loved this book so much. It's a World War II historical fiction about 2 sisters in France. That story enough was very unique to me because I don't think I've ever read a World War II story that took place in France. It was very much about how the war affected the women who were left to try to take care of the kids and themselves and dealing with the harshness of war. And this book was so good. It's so good. It made me cry, which doesn't happen very often. But yeah, I absolutely loved this, and would highly recommend it to those of you that haven't read it yet and really like historical fiction. Yeah, it's so good. And then the other historical fiction favorite for me was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I just read this in November. Yeah. And I loved this book too. This one deals with a movie star named Evelyn Hugo. And it deals with her kind of climb to fame, or her rise to fame. And you find out why it is that she had 7 husbands throughout her life. And the story's interesting because she's telling her life story to a journalist who she has contacted, has sought out to write a book about her life, because she has never talked about her life before. She's always been very private. So it's got kind of that voyeuristic sort of feel to it. The thing that people like about celebrities, like trying to learn about their lives, and, you know, kind of that obsession with celebrity is definitely in here. It deals with LGBTQ plus themes. So many great things going on in this book. This was one that was definitely hyped up for me, and it lived up to the hype. I loved it, and yeah, absolutely loved this. So my next 2019 favorite, the category I'm using for it is my favorite 2019 release. It is technically a historical fiction, but it was a 2019 release, so that's how I'm going to categorize it. This should come as no surprise to anybody. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yes, I have 2 Taylor Jenkins Reid books on my favorites list. What can I say? This one I read first. I read this when it came out, like in, what was it, April or March or something like that. Blew my mind. It's about a fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and the kind of story of how their band came to be, and the writing of this record, this monumental, amazing record that after they wrote it, the band broke up and nobody knows why. So it's told in interview format. All the band members are being interviewed and talking to this reporter. Not just the band, but other people like their manager and other people that were kind of in their inner circle, are being interviewed. So the format was really cool. I loved it. It was like reading an episode of Behind the Music, which was awesome. And you can tell in this book that she definitely got a lot of inspiration from Fleetwood Mac and their album Rumors. Yeah, this book was so good. I feel like I'm just going to keep saying that every single time, but this book was so good. Being somebody that loves like rock music and loves the stories behind things, like how an album is made, this just like rocked my world. It was perfect. I loved this story. It made me wish that this fictionalized album was real, because I wanted to go out and listen to it. It was cool that she put the lyrics to the songs in the back of the book, but I want to hear the songs. You know what I mean? I want to hear the songs. So somebody needs to get on that. Somebody needs to make the music for Daisy Jones and the Six, because that'd be awesome. But yeah, this was great. Again, another one that I know is on a lot of people's favorites list this year, but I feel like it's totally well-deserved. I loved it. All right, so next up is my favorite horror novel of 2019, and it was Confessions by Kenny Minato. This book, the twists in this book were just crazy. Like, there's a big twist about 50 pages into this book that my jaw hit the floor, and I just was like, I had to like put the book down and walk away, because I was just like, I cannot believe that just happened. This book was crazy. It deals with a teacher who teaches, I think it was like middle school age kids, and she had a preschool age daughter that died. Tragically died, and she has reason to believe, or knows, that a couple of her students were involved in her daughter's death. So she sits them down, her classroom down, on the last day of school, and she says, "My daughter is dead, and I know that a couple of you had something to do with it, and now we're going to deal with it." And yep, this is a revenge book. This is a book about the ugliness of revenge, the dark side of revenge. It's dark. It's dark. And I don't think I've read a lot of Japanese horror, but I've heard that it is very dark, and this definitely is. I definitely want to read more Japanese horror because of this book, because this book just floored me. It's so short, but packs such a punch. And just like I said, the hits just keep on coming when you're reading this book. The twists are insane. The writing was great. I loved everything about this. So yeah, definitely pick up Confessions if you think it's something that you'd like. So next up is my favorite mystery / thriller of the year. This one was a slow burn, but I had a couple of little issues with it, but overall, it was my favorite mystery thriller of the year. And I read quite a few of those this year. This one topped them, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Definitely more of a suspense book, I guess I should say. It's not a mystery, really. It's not a thriller. It's a suspense book, but I think it falls in that category, you know. This book was definitely, like I said, it had kind of a slow start for me, but then I just got sucked in and I couldn't put it down. I had to know what was going on and why things happened or were happening, and it got pretty intense at the end. So yeah, it was really good. It deals with a woman who, you never find out her name, but she marries this older man after a very, very short courtship. His name is Mr. De Winter, and she moves to his estate in England. Manderley, is that what it was called, right? I believe it was called Manderley. And it's this big, beautiful estate. And he had been married before to a woman named Rebecca, who died. And she gets there, and there are just bits of, you know, kind of memories and things of Rebecca just everywhere. Kind of like she's still there, but she's dead. But her coat is still hanging in the closet. Her desk is still there with all of her, you know, like unsent mail and things like that. Just things like that, you know, are kind of unsettling. And then there's this housekeeper who was very attached to Rebecca and is not very thrilled that there's a new Mrs. De Winter. So there's some conflict there. It was intense. It was suspenseful. Manderley sounds like such an awesome place. Like, it was modeled after a real place. I can't remember what the estate was called, but Daphne du Maurier, actually, I think she lived there for a short time. And so it's a real place, but it sounds so Gothic and just lovely. And I would love to go there someday. So yeah, this was a great book with a great setting and just great atmosphere. So if that's like something that you know you're into, you should definitely check out Rebecca. All right, we've got two more favorites, guys. The first one is my favorite nonfiction of the year, and I didn't tally up how many nonfiction books I read. I want to say it was probably between 12 and 15. I'm not really sure. But this one was actually the last nonfiction book I think I read, for the year, and it took the cake, guys. Voices from Chernobyl by Svetlana Alexievich. Gosh. This is a heavy read. It is about, it's an oral history of the aftermath of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. And it was one of those books that just, I had to read it in snippets because it was so heavy to me. It was so sad to me. The things that these people lived through and continued to live through years after the accident. It's just so sad. The way the story was told is why I think it was so effective for me, and so it just kind of rose above all the other nonfiction, because the way that Svetlana Alexievich, I cannot say that name, that she chose to do it in the way she did, in which she literally sat with these people and they told their story and she just put it in the book. Her voice is not there at all. And when you think about it, it shouldn't be, because this is their story. This is their experience. And she's just the messenger. And so I thought that was brilliant. It was brilliantly done. And she talked to everybody. She talked to scientists. She talked to teachers. She talked to farmers. She talked to people that were children at the time. I mean, just all across the board. She talked to like everybody. And so it's so well-rounded. There's so many perspectives. Just such a brilliant book. Yeah. If you want to read more about Chernobyl, if maybe you've read something before or you watched the HBO miniseries like I did and wanted to learn more, this is definitely the book to pick up. It was brilliant. And then my last favorite for 2019 was my favorite middle grade / YA book of the year. This is a really big book. And the book I chose is The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. This book was so good. I loved the way it was told. It's kind of like, it's told in verse, which I didn't know when I picked it up that it was told that way, but it is. And this particular edition is a full color illustrated edition. So you get some cute illustrations also along the way. It's about a gorilla named Ivan who lives in this kind of roadside mall type of thing, and he lives in this little cage, and he has a rather sad life. And he has memories of his time in the wild, which is also just like heartbreaking. And then he befriends an elephant that comes in, and it's just such a heartwarming story, but also such a important story about the way that we treat animals. And yeah, it's an important book, I think, for kids to read. And it's told in such a way that they understand. I wish I had read this with my daughter when I read it, but I didn't. And so now I definitely want to reread it and read it with her, maybe in another year or two, because she's only 5, so she might not really pick up on some of the themes and stuff that I would want her to. But yeah, this book was amazing. It was so good. And yeah, I loved it. All right, guys, so those are my favorite books of 2019. Please let me know down below if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. Were they your favorites when you read them? I would love to know. Also, please let me know what your favorite reads of the year were, because I'd love to hear what everybody just loved this year. It's like my favorite thing. So yeah, fill up those comments down below with your favorite reads of the year, because who knows, maybe I'll find some new reads that way too, you know? And I hope that if you haven't read these books, this video has made you want to read them, because I want you to read them. All right, so I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday, and that 2019 overall treated you all well, and that 2020 is going to be even better. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.